Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast with a whole bunch of people.
All-star panel.
There's a bunch of people in here with us, and we don't know how they got in. But Mark, who are they?
Well, we're really excited to have the Emmy-nominated team, editing team behind History of the World Part 2, which is currently streaming on Hulu. Angel Gamboa Bryant, George Mandl, and Daniel Flesher. Thanks for coming on for a few minutes.
Howdy.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Oh my God,
well,
that show is so good. It's just, and I'm dying to hear how it's done because it seems really complicated and labor intensive. I can only imagine.
Yeah, like it's obviously it's a sequel 40 years after Mel Brooks's History of the World Part 1, which came out, I think, in 1981. And so my first question is, how do you go back to that movie that's 40 years old and it's sketch comedy? It's like, bits and pieces. We all remember the 15 Commandments. Oops, I dropped a tablet, 10 Commandments, or it's good to be the king, all that funny stuff. How do you sort of like look at that movie and then you have this 8-part series, and how do you work to sort of get that flavor and that feel of that movie, but sort of bring it up to current time? I find that fascinating.
And let's just go in a row. Angel to George to Daniel, and then we'll mix it up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It's a combination of, brilliant writing from our executive producers, Nick Kroll. I mean, their backgrounds are varied as well, from stand-up comedy to a lot of improv. So between Nick Kroll, Wanda Sykes, Ike Barinholtz, and Dave Stassen, they did an absolutely incredible job writing the sketches, from conception to shooting. And then once we had everything in post, it was like basically magic putting everything together. We had all kinds of tools and things and tricks, and the comedy was just great. The casting was great. The cinematography was great. But yeah, it was definitely challenging because it was different than cutting like a linear comedy. Sketch comedy there's a lot of variety. You're bouncing around the history, lots of different characters. But yeah, it was really cool.
That's great.
And there's also that thing of time. I mean, the element of comedy, timing. I guess that's with editing drama. There's a kind of drama timing, and then with comedy, there's a kind of comedy timing, and that has to come from somewhere. I mean, is there like a lot? Is there like a chart on the wall that says 4.1 frames is funny, but 7 frames is not funny?
I don't think there's any hard and fast rule, but there's a lot of test screenings, and the more you do it, you sort of get to understand when people will laugh at certain times and certain jokes. But yeah, sometimes those 7 frames really do make a difference.
Yeah, it's a lifetime.
And George, I'll ask you this: like, there's some standalone sketches, but there's a lot of flow through stuff where there's the Civil War or Shirley, which is a very funny, take on 70s or 80s sitcoms. How do you know when to put in, okay, it's time to go back to a Shirley, or let's go to the Russian Revolution? Is that a decision you guys are making, or is that sort of a team decision?
It's definitely a team decision. This entire experience through our post department and with all our executive producers, Nick Kroll, Wanda Sykes, Ike Barinholtz, David Stassen, and Mel Brooks, we all kind of work together to piece that puzzle together and figure out, when do we want a long thing that we have to reference back to 2 episodes earlier? When do we want a short one that people don't have to think about that stuff? And it's a delicate balance, and it was challenging to sort of weave all that stuff together in a way that made sense to us, so that each episode felt funny and sort of well-rounded, if you will, and also just had a nice diversity of sketches and cast and that sort of thing. Like, we tried it with more of one of those longer sketches in an episode, and we ended up deciding to break it into smaller pieces and let it carry through the season just to kind of spread it around. But we did spend a lot of time. There's a lot of time of like us and our EPs standing in the hallway of the cutting rooms, just sort of like staring at a wall with these sketches on it, going like, what if we took this and put it over there? No. And then we do that.
Oh, that's funny.
Did that for months, and then finally,
it felt.
I can see that.
Feels like a Rubik's cube, and not only that, but also you have all these. I mean, the guest stars. David Duchovny doing Howard Cosell. It's like so out of left field. But it's like you also have to feel everybody's Jack Black doing the. How do you get everybody sort of their time? I guess and give them enough time, or they don't feel short shrifted.
Yeah,
is that an issue? I'll ask Angel that.
That's a tough question. I mean, I think all of that was kind of, predetermined in the writing. By the time we had it, we kind of knew, but we did have to kind of be conscious of that, because I know there were moments where we thought about cutting them down a little more, and we had to kind of like add things back to make sure they did have their time. But I mean, it's the same thing. It took a long time to sort of like craft all that and make sure it was all balanced.
Yeah.
Was it, besides the original film and just the Mel Brooks vibe in general, was there any other reference that you guys had that you would consult or told everybody, in other words, like watch Monty Python's Flying Circus or watch
I think what was so fun about this project was we had so many genre parodies. Yeah. So normally when I start a project, I'll choose like 5 to 10 films or shows to watch. All kind of within the same genre, like, I'm doing a Western. I need to watch like some Westerns. Yeah. But for this, literally every night I was watching something wildly different. I was watching like The Notebook one night, Fiddler on the Roof the next, Iron Man the next. And it was like, these are all things we were having to emulate and parody.
Right.
And they're all genres and films and stuff that I love. So it was so fun to be involved in that.
Yeah.
That's true.
And it's really
sounds like a fun project for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's really hard to sort of keep that level up, and I'm laughing constantly through a sketch comedy. That's really hard to do. Usually there's lots of hits and misses and that kind of stuff. But I love to ask everybody's personal favorite. Mine, I love the sort of the Curb Your Enthusiasm take on the Jesus and Judas Iscariot. That really had me laughing. I also loved You've Been Conned with Marco Polo. That cracked me up with the big line at the end. So do you have favorite ones, or are they all sort of ones that you like to work on? It just made you laugh? Yeah.
Are you allowed to say?
Yeah.
Oh, we have our babies.
What are your babies? The Russian Revolution was my favorite, just because of the amount of variety. There were musical numbers. We had the parody of Jackass. We had the parody of the Housewives.
That's right.
We had so many different levels in the Mudmans. Nick Cole as Mudman.
He's so funny. Yeah,
they were so good.
And Pamela Adlon. Okay, how about yours, George? Did you have a favorite?
I mean, it's hard. It's like choosing your favorite child, right?
I know.
I know.
I mean, I have. I'm just gonna rapid fire 3 on you. Curb Your Judaism.
Yep. Yeah.
Who's in Space.
I was gonna say that's my favorite.
and the Nicene Council were 3 that I worked on, where I was like, okay, these are so special, and they're all for all different reasons. I can unpack any of them if you want me to, but I won't.
Of course we do.
Yeah. Well, with Curb, I mean, I had a history with Nick working on The League, and The League is funny. Created by a very talented man named Jeff Schaefer, who is one of the lead EPs on Curb Your Enthusiasm right now. So he and Larry David are like sort of leading that charge, and he's been with them since Seinfeld. So I got a nice improv background from that, and then watching Nick play a Larry David character with J.P. Smoove and Richard Kind, telling the story of Jesus was just very. I talked to Nick about this. It was extremely meta for both of us, because we're just like there's so many things going on here that are so close to home. So I had a lot of fun with that, and they're both just JB and Nick together improvising is like, I mean, there was so much stuff left on the cutting room floor.
I bet.
That's what I was gonna say. How do you guys not? How do you not just make this like a 12-hour episode? Because it had to be so much. Good stuff.
Well, with improv, and we did this on The League as well, I cut a kitchen sink first, which is like every joke that I love, I just jam them all in. I make like a monster scene, like, so a sketch like that ends up at like whatever it was, 4 minutes, was probably like 8 or 9 minutes to start. And then we all watch it together and we go, what are you responding to? What are you responding to? And the editing team and then the EPs, and we all kind of just whittle it down together until we. What did Ike used to say about, like, he said, like, we start with like a big piece of meat and we want it to be like, what was it?
I've forgotten that one.
Oh, no, it sounds like a good one.
I think our biggest piece of meat was the Beatles parody at first. That thing, I mean, we could have made that like an entire episode itself. There was so much improv. Like all the actors, they all went off script and just delivered us gold, like time after time.
Yeah.
There's so much content in there.
And it's got to be difficult to pick the stuff to cut out. I mean, do you just open up the timeline and just click on every other file and delete and just because you can't pick?
Well, I think at first it's like you have the longest one possible, and then you start showing it to people. You see what other people are responding to, maybe what your own personal biases are. You sort of try to make a blend of what you think is the best,
like what gets the biggest laughs and the
yeah.
I envy
a lot of
scientific approach.
Exactly. That's great.
Did you have?
Overall, I think.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say my favorite sketch to cut was JC Resurrection.
Oh, that was
which
so
was
good.
It was springboarding off of George's Nicaea.
I love that.
So it's sort of like the culmination of the Jesus story. And man, that was so fun because they had shot it like a long narrative almost with like 5 or 6 long scenes. And then that was Nick Kroll's baby. He directed that. And then at a certain point, he was like, let's just make this more of like a chopped up like Michael Bay trailer. And he did a voiceover for me and just said, all right, good luck. And I was like, oh, great, cool. He really trusted me with like making that like a goofy,
that's great. Fun. It's good to have an editor that can be trusted. That's I mean, people don't realize editing, the magic and the skill and invisible treasure that editing is.
And do you all have a background in like comedy? Like, do you have comedy, improv, stand up anywhere back there that helped?
All of the above, I think, between all of us, and that allowed us to like really kind of assign ourselves to the right ones, like, we had one of our other editors who's working today and can't make it, Steph Philo. She's done all sorts of stuff, but a long time ago she did reality. She did like housewife shows, and I don't know all her credits, but we had some like reality spoofs, like the Real Housewives of Kublai Khan. Right. Angel worked on that one, and did that one together. And I don't know what else, you guys. I feel like I'm talking.
What you got?
Well, the Shirley Chisholm was multicam sitcom, which I have a background working with Wanda Sykes on her other multicam sitcoms. So that was, and then I do a lot of stand up too. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I cut a lot of stand up too. So my background is all in comedy, pretty much.
Wow.
Stand up, multicam sitcoms, and unscripted comedy as well.
Well, I will say, Angel, that the Shirley takeoff is so spot on with the editing, and also the just the look of it has that sort of yellowish feel of like a late 70s or early 80s sitcom, and it just with the laugh track and everything, that was one of my favorites too, and that was one that goes throughout all the episodes.
Thanks. Yeah, we all worked on that though, just to be clear, like every single one of us, George, Dan, Steph Philo, and myself, we all worked on it, collaborated together, and kind of came up with the look of it, the design.
Oh, that's cool.
That was probably the most collaborative sketch or the template that we did. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I was going to ask, like, are they all collaborative, or do you each have or is kind of a mix? Like,
yeah, I think to a certain degree, every sketch is a collaboration. At the end of, so when we were doing our initial passes, we were all working from home, so you're actually seeing the offices in the background here. We would jump on Evercast and show each other the sketches before even the EPs watched it. We gave each other notes, and editor notes are great, by the way.
I got to hear that.
Yeah, editor notes are awesome. So then, even before it went out, it was already more of like a collaborative sketch by that point.
Oh, interesting.
And do you guys do your post-production effects? Like Mark was talking about the look, the sort of color grading look of a TV series versus a feature film look or a Michael Bay type of look, like your color lookup tables and whatever. Is that your place too, or are there digital effects artists that do stuff and then hand you the footage?
Right. Well, I mean, the looks are set by our director of photography.
Okay.
And guys, help me out. Kevin Atkinson.
Atkinson.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry. I had a brain fart. He worked really hard, not only with the color, but also the framing, like in
right.
the JC Resurrection trailer that Dan was talking about, that was anamorphic. What was it, 235?
Yeah, I think it was like 240, 235, something like that.
Shirley Chisholm, which is 4x3 with the pillar boxes on the side.
Right.
Most of it was 16:9, but occasionally we did some other things. And yeah, he was setting all those looks very intentionally. And then when we went into color grading at a place called Point 360, we did a lot of work there as well to kind of like what you're talking about with Shirley. We worked on that a little bit more there, and Kevin was also there working with colorists to try and make everything just so.
Right.
Well, it certainly works, because you go from Shirley, then you can go to something completely different, and it totally works. And then you go to something else. I just keep thinking, wow, this is such a labor-intensive show. I mean, 8 episodes, half hour each, but just seems like a lot of work for every stage from to you guys and beyond. And it shows. It's really funny. It all works. And like I said before, sketch comedy can be very hit or miss. Very few, if any, misses on the show, which is incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. There's a couple of, like, Hitler on Ice, which, I remember from the movie. I think that was from the original film. And like maybe Jews in Space and a few others. So there's a couple that carry over from the film, right? Just like 2 or 3. And is that something that they intentionally did, or that was just funny and let's do it again? I mean, how did that come up?
I think everybody was just very excited to do the ice skating sketch in Jews in Space.
Gotcha.
What was interesting, actually, at a certain point, George mentioned, he was like, I wonder if there's any old film reels we can pull up, some dailies to incorporate into these sketches. And our post supervisor,
from the original film.
Our post soup, Trish Hadley, went to Brooks Films and pulled out some original film reels. And George and I have some pictures of us like goofily holding these. Like,
wow, that's pretty cool.
Terrible pictures, but they're funny.
They were awful.
Lighting is really bad.
All right, now we need to see them. Sorry.
Now I do send those to us.
So the original film for Hitler on Ice used like an 18-second clip, and it was a wide, and that was it, and that was the entire sketch, just some VO, and we got the joke. But it turns out when I was looking through the dailies that there was about 19 takes, and there was all sorts of different coverage. So I started incorporating a lot of that into that sketch. And then the second to last take, Hitler, the guy who plays Hitler, falls on the ice. And that's what we ended up basing the sketch around. We made him look like an asshole instead of like a good ice skater.
Hey, this is how it should be.
Exactly, yeah.
That's amazing. Righting the wrongs with comedy.
Yes.
I love that.
Let me ask you about, Mel Brooks is obviously, it's his name above everything. And he does the introductions, saying whatever. And there's also a funny deep fake, like in Jews in Space and a few other places where he's this macho guy, bodybuilder. And what else? How did you have any interaction with Mr. Brooks through all this, or was it mostly the EPs, that you mentioned earlier?
It was mostly the EPs. We were there he did all the voiceover, and so we were there for his we were there on Zoom with him. Nobody was actually, I think it was just like one sound person.
Okay.
And then Nick Kroll was directing him on all that stuff. And it was incredible to watch. He's still got it. He's like you would ask him, Nick would pitch him a joke, and he would kind of pause and look up for like 5, 7, 8 seconds, and you're like, what's going on? And then he comes back down and he's like, okay, I got it. And he was
like the computer.
And then he would deliver gold.
Yeah.
It was great.
And working it out in his head.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
But yeah, and he, just like everyone else, he gave us alts on this voiceover, so we were able to mess around with it and in the edit and sort of, pick the best of what he gave us.
Wow.
That's great. Yeah, he's got a little bit of history and knowing when to deliver. Like if you say 30 seconds, he can probably nail 30 seconds and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pro.
I know, right?
What are you guys working on? If you can tell us, what are you guys working on currently? Is anything happening? Or I know there's a strike and all this, but anything going on after this show?
I'm currently cutting it. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I just did a clip show for the History of Family Feud with Steve Harvey. But I still have 5 episodes to finish on the Upshaws, so that's on pause because of the strike. But when they're back, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Okay.
Did you guys know that Angel is nominated for 2 other Emmys for the Upshaws?
Did not know that.
Wow.
Congratulations.
That's
amazing.
impressive.
George.
Hat trick. Incredible.
That's amazing.
That's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, and the strike, yeah, that sort of put everybody on a pause. We're all on pauses. Just about everybody I know. We're all just like waiting.
Yeah.
I'm on pause as well, but I'm excited because something I worked on is coming out, I think this fall. A show called Chad, which is Nassim Pedrad's sort of version. It's got some similarities to like Pen 15, but it's with her. And her sort of, experiences growing up as a Persian American, trying to like assimilate. And it's very funny because she plays like a little boy version of herself.
I love that. That's funny.
Yeah, so that's I think in September on Roku.
Okay.
What about you, Daniel? Still haven't seen the cat, by the way.
I locked her away.
Oh yeah, that's right. She's not going
to photobomb today. I'm currently cutting a film called Last Train to Fortune. It's a Western starring Malcolm McDowell. It's really fun. It's fun taking into those like Western tropes. But I want to give a shout out to a show I did a few years ago, which finally found a home on Peacock, and it's called Shrink. It was showrun by Ted Trimper and stars Tim Baltz and Mary Holland, and Tim and Mary were both in History of the World as well.
Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys know, I did the poster for History of the World too.
She's a designer.
I do movie posters.
Really?
I did the poster. Yeah, I had a team. I know. I had a team.
That's crazy.
And, I know, it's crazy, right? It's such a small world. It's such a small world.
She's always dropping those bombs, like, "Oh yeah, I did the poster for that movie." It's like
it seems less exciting because it's all post what you like. You guys are done, and I kind of come in, and then you do all this work on your computer, and you're doing all this, and then there's a pause, and all of a sudden it's out there, and you're like, "Oh, it's on the red carpet." What do you know? There's that poster I did. So yeah, it was kind of fun to see that.
Billboard.
Yeah, I didn't illustrate. I hired. We hired an illustrator who did the illustration, but we had to put kind of together the pieces and the many people and where they go, and it was pretty fun.
George and I were at the FYC screening, and it was broadcast up there on the screen before the movie started or the show started. Cool. And George and I were like, "Do you know who did this?" And no, I wonder who did this. This is looking good.
Now you know.
Maybe great. Someday I'll meet that person.
Me and my team.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be part of history.
Yeah. Part 2.
Exactly. So yeah, that was kind of a career highlight, being able to do that, because doing an illustrated poster is also kind of a big deal. But this isn't about me. This is about you guys. I was like, I want to share. I have something in common with you guys. I worked on it too.
Yeah. We're all connected.
That's really funny. So this is
a small big city.
I know we have a few minutes left, but I was interested in like how different. I'm kind of going backwards a little bit. How different is this from what you normally do? Because you guys just named a few shows you were working on. I know there was a lot of sketches and things. Is there a different kind of process in your brain when you're working with a lot of short sketches and then compiling them, as opposed to compiling a bunch of scenes for one big movie? Like, how is the thinking different? It's kind of
you have to approach them as their own little. I mean, their own little contained scenes, right? I mean, all vignettes, besides the tent poles, which are broader storylines that span across episodes, each one you kind of handle as its own thing. They're completely unrelated for the most part, unless they're a tent pole. So this is more about the sketch comedy itself and the fast-paced nature of it, and then finding a way to like balance all of those scenes together, the short scenes and the long scenes.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So it is sort of about a balance, like where to breathe, where to bring the action, that's really interesting.
It's like you're making a series of short films that you tie together.
Yeah.
Separate entities.
Long or short.
There's definitely times where we would line things up together and go, "Oh no." It does not work like that. They're just way too much. Yeah,
it's like producing an album of songs where there's a lot of thought that goes into the order of the songs. Like if you listen to an album and the songs flow together, and this one sounds great after that song. And editing is so much like music. I always say that. I think I don't know, but I always guess when I meet editors that they're also musicians. Is that true?
Mm.
In some way, or have an interest?
We're comedians.
Some kind
I
of
was in
music
orchestra in high school.
You were in orchestra. What
Yeah,
did you
that's about
play?
it.
What would you?
I
What'd you
played
play?
cello.
Cello. Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
That's the
Yeah.
picture I need to see. I used to DJ with turntables.
That's
Yeah,
music?
well, that's music.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That is the coordination and assembly of music in a way that is very much like editing. Yeah.
Yeah, say I played an instrument when I was younger, and then I danced ballet pretty much most of my life and through college. So I think
Wow.
there's
So
also
it's-
I think all editors have that. I don't know.
It's a rhythm
connection to
thing,
music.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
It's math too. You know, there's math to music, and you know, there's that great line. And I think Miles Davis was like, "Silence is a note," and with editing, I mean, you
Yeah.
know what that means in editing too. There's that pause, you know, that timing, and that you don't cut here, you cut there, and nobody knows why, but you know, because you're an editor. It is a skill, and I have such respect for editors, because I've worked on films for most of my life, and I've seen editors literally save trash. You know, they've taken garbage and they turn it into music, and it's like that's where it happens with the editing. So
you guys worked with gold, though.
Yeah, you guys.
yeah,
I mean,
well,
much
We
gold.
worked with gold on this one. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
you can make better gold out of the gold that you get, you know.
Right. And I think there was this collective sort of sense of like, don't screw this up. Don't screw this up.
right.
Can't
well,
mess it up.
well,
Don't
you
ruin it.
well, you didn't ruin it or screw it
Oh,
up.
it's
And I
so
will say
good.
that anybody who's watching and has not seen History of the World Part 2, please go to Hulu and watch it. It's 8 episodes. They're about half hour
So
each.
fun. They go
And
so fast.
And it goes fast and
Yeah.
it's hysterical. I mean,
Yeah.
Nick Kroll, Ike Barinholtz, Wanda Sykes. I mean, they're in a lot of the sketches, plus a lot of other all-star, guest stars. It's really funny. And I usually don't belly laugh at home by myself watching TV, but I did many times. So if you're looking for a laugh in these times, I mean, please watch this show.
Yeah.
It's really funny. And I want to thank everybody to come on here that came for a half hour today to give us a little insight into how you put it together.
Right.
Yeah, it's good to talk to editors. I always like the philosophy of editing. There's a I mean, I could go on and on about it, but I won't.
Hey, that's a good question, actually, because we have a couple more minutes. What is your philosophy of editing? Like, just your overall thought of how you approach it. Just
You cut on the
I
blink.
know that's a big one.
Cut on the
What's your philosophy? That's it. Just real quick. Can you just tell us what that is?
I think there's easy to edit something because it's technically easy, but then you have to always keep in mind that you need to give something for the you're making something for the audience. So anytime I come up to a stumbling block, I always ask myself, what does the audience need at the moment? And often it's the more technically difficult thing to do. So I always force myself to go through that exercise.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
George?
I mean, for me, it's continuing the writing process, right? You start with your script, and then it gets changed on set as it's shot. And then we get it, and we are essentially chefs putting ingredients together, trying to make the best meal out of what was given to us.
Yeah.
And so
Interesting.
I'm paraphrasing someone. I don't want to take credit for that. But but that is it. And I think, every meal needs to be cooked in the right way for whatever you're trying to make.
And you have to add the ingredients at the right time. You can't put your basil in first, you got to put that in later.
Yeah.
Yes, chef.
Yeah. How about you, Angel? We'll end it with you. What's your thoughts and philosophy?
Editing at its core is visual storytelling, right? So it's almost like painting a picture with moving images.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of like at its core, you have to design what the feeling is with the pictures and how you line them up together, how they work together. And then you're adding layers of sound and story. So the story, the visuals, that's the most important part. And then you layer everything else to kind of like bring it to life. Sound effects, visual effects, graphics, rewrites, all that. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting to talk to all three of you. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us today. I want to thank Angel Gamboa Bryant, George Mandl, and Daniel Flesher. Thanks, and hang around for a second. We'll do the goodbye outro. Brooke will do that, and we'll just say goodbye.
And we'll just say bye afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So much for
And
having
we'll
us.
bring Stephanie. Bye.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Bye.